Broadcasting from Baltimore, Maryland, this is 5x3 Radio, where strength is for everyone. I'm your host, Emily Sokolinski, owner of 5x3 Training, a strength and conditioning gym in Baltimore, along with my co-host, Rebecca Fishburne, founder of Cornerstone Strength Maryland. Each week, Rebecca and I will discuss the ins and outs of strength training, why there is a no one-size-fits-all approach, and why strength is so important in our daily lives. Thanks for spending some time with us today. Now, on with the show. So Rebecca and I are back. It's been a few weeks since we last recorded a podcast. You went on vacation.
Oh gosh, I don't even remember, Emily.
Right. Actually, you went on vacation and you didn't go to the gym.
Oh, that was insane. Yeah, I did.
You did go to the gym?
No, I didn't. I brought kettlebells down to the beach.
Right. And I remember saying in the podcast
so
we did prior
ago.
to that, I said I want to hear about your vacation with no gym, but you did take the kettlebells. So did you use them?
Yeah. I mean, and what I did, I kind of have my usual off lift day routines where, I'll walk, power walk,
right.
whatever,
right.
cycle, something like that. So that was all the same. It was just the 3 lift days. I just played around with kettlebells instead.
Fun.
Yeah, it was good times.
And your family was fine? You going off to swing your
I just did it in the living room. Just don't walk past me. I'm going to swing this thing.
Oh, whoops. Sorry, Mom. I didn't see you there. All of a sudden, she's like, what? I felt something. Oh, no.
No, I mean, I think the first time I did the kettlebell swings, and it's you kind of figure out how much space you have and which direction you're going to swing. But there was a little bit of look of concern, oh my God, the TV. It's I'm not going to let go of it. I'm not going to launch the thing. But it's if you don't know what exactly the person's going to be doing, if you've never seen kettlebell swings and somebody hike, it's crap,
So you were able to do some exercise and some training while away. We did not do any training on our vacation as per usual. We went to Deep Creek. I sat on my butt and I read and I drank coffee. And at the end of the vacation, Diego said, you could do this at home too, if you wanted to, take a day to drink coffee and read. I said, no.
That's a thing?
That's a thing? Actually people do that for relaxing on the weekend? I don't know about that. But it was nice. And we did some kayaking and we did some walking.
Fun.
But it was nice to have that week off. I definitely came back and felt, my body felt better. And everything felt really heavy and hard that first week, as usual. But then by the second week, But I like that.
You come back from a week off, and gravity has changed.
It's like God, this squat feels so heavy, and even though I took some weight off of it, and then the next week everything's back to normal. So, but it was nice. It was nice to get away. So we have decided this is a subject that we have been thinking about for probably months, I'd say.
And
since
one
we started
we've
the
been
podcast.
talking about just off and on forever and ever.
So it's a subject that Rebecca and I have been talking about for weeks. And it is a subject of body image. And full disclaimer, this podcast could be very touchy for many people. It does touch on a subject that some have a difficult time talking about and thinking about. But we both feel it's a subject that bears a discussion for men and for women, not just for women. There are definitely men that we have met and coached who have concerns about their own body and have their own issues with body image and how this plays a role in strength training. So we're going to spend a couple episodes talking about this, not in a row. We're thinking that we are going to do 1 or 2 back to back, and then maybe have an interview, and then maybe jump back on the podcast of body image. But today's episode, we want to introduce ourselves and talk about ourselves
around this topic.
And Right. And why this topic is even something that we discuss on a regular basis. And it's simply because Rebecca and I have been there when we were younger. And it's taken, for me at least, it's taken a long time. It's taken a number of years. I'd say definitely 20 plus years of my
Yeah,
life.
I mean, I don't know necessarily that I'd even personally say it's something I'm, shut the door on.
Completely. Yeah, yeah.
I'm a little older, Emily. Things are changing.
You're 4.5 years older
Emily,
than I am.
I'm going to tell you, there's a difference in my body at 45 and my body at 50. And yeah.
I believe it. I believe it. I mean, there's definitely a difference in my body at 45 than there was at 35. And at the same time, I am so much happier with my body at 45 than I was at my body at 35 and definitely at 25. So that's what's interesting to me, is to see the body image issue has, as I've gotten older, I have created a much better relationship with myself, internally, externally, with food, with just people in general. And it's a subject that I never wanted to discuss when I was in therapy for it. I never discussed this. I always talked about something else, because I realized it wasn't something that someone else was going to be able to fix for me. I had to take care of it for myself. Have you had that same feeling? I mean, over the years, like, have you ever been in therapy for it, or has it something that you just never really wanted to discuss with anybody? It was something that you internally dealt with and thought, it's something I had to deal with on my own.
Well, I mean, I don't know, Emily. I guess everything that a person goes to therapy for ultimately comes down to it's something that they've got to address or deal with themselves. Right. It's interesting to me that in the context of therapy, that's something that doesn't come up, when that, based on our conversations in the past, seems to be something that was so central to the way you understood yourself and your place in the world. Right. So that's kind of surprising to me that that's something that you wouldn't necessarily want to talk about. But I mean, I guess, like, really, I think in general, body image is something that's hard for people to talk about with other people anyway, because people who struggle with body image generally don't view themselves the same way that other people do. So it's not necessarily a conversation that you can have with someone where they're going to be like, I know exactly what you mean. I was just thinking the same thing about the size of your thighs, or I was just thinking the same thing about, like, nobody is going to be able to relate to what you're feeling. And then it's also, I mean, it's nebulous. It shifts, right? It's mood dependent, or, it affects your confidence, but also your current level of confidence about other things affects the way you perceive your image when you look at yourself in the mirror. Like, a person who's feeling confident is going to be more likely to focus, if they're looking in the mirror, on aspects of their body that they are more comfortable with. When they're feeling insecure, more likely to focus on aspects of their body that they are less secure about. So, I mean, it's, I don't know, it's just a hard topic to even be honest with oneself about, let alone have a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
But so why don't you back up, though, and say, like, because at one point you were talking about body image for you when you were in your 20s versus now. So go ahead, tell that story, fill it in for people who haven't had this conversation with you before.
Right. So it started, honestly, probably when I was in my teens. I was a freshman in high school at the School for the Arts, and I'd been a dancer. I started dancing at age 6. And it was freshman year. I was in ballet class, and a substitute teacher was teaching that year, the first part of the year. And she walked by me in class one day, and just kind of casually said, looked at me up and down, maybe adjusted my arm, I can't remember, but casually said, you could stand to lose a few, or something along those lines. Whatever she said, it was definitely in regards to my body and how I looked. And I had never had anyone say anything like that to me the entire, how many years that I had been dancing already, 6, 7 years. I hadn't gone through a growth spurt yet, or perhaps I was going at the time. I kind of had my growth spurt later than my girlfriends in high school. And it was like the rose-colored glasses came off my face and were crushed right in front of me, because all of a sudden the person I saw in that mirror 5 minutes later was not the same girl who started class that morning. And it took off from there. I mean, it was that instant that I found myself crying in a doctor's office the next year when I was going off to a dance program that summer, and I had to have my first GYN exam, and she weighed me, and I just broke down in tears by the weight on the scale, and said something to the effect of, "I'm not supposed to weigh this much. My dance teacher, Mr. Campbell says we can't weigh over," and I just kind of randomly picked some number out of my head, which freaked my mother out because she'd never seen me so upset before about that. And then she was quite worried about me going off that summer to the program, but I was able to hold myself together when I went away and eat and dance. But it was hard being away from my parents. I'm not a real traveler. I'm a homebody even at that time. So I came back.
Some things don't change.
And no, always. I'm still a homebody. And I came back, and I could sense there was something wrong going on with all of us. We didn't talk about it. As you said, we didn't talk about it. The dancers did not talk about who's eating what are you doing, how are you trying to stay thin. But it was very quiet. It was very kind of, it was like underneath the surface. She's doing the peanut butter diet, or she's taking laxatives, or she's making herself throw up. But no one really just talked about it. That's not something that we divulged to ourselves. That went into college, and in college I found myself eating very little, and then eating a lot, and then being upset with the way I looked, and then being okay with how I looked. There's a definite memory of me sitting in the bathroom at UMBC with one of my girlfriends just crying because I was turning 21. I was injured, and I'm not sure if I could dance in my dance concert. Am I there? Are you here? And just somehow all that stress of the injury, and it's November, and it's dark, I just looked at myself in the mirror and saw someone fat staring back at me and just lost it. I can still see myself sitting in that bathroom crying, and she's trying to console me. But in college, we didn't talk about it. Again, we didn't talk about it. My mother tried to put me in therapy for it when I was in high school. I think high school, maybe college. But then she pulled me out because I wasn't talking about the issue. Like I said, I think it was high school when she first started me in therapy. And she pulled me out because she discovered that I wasn't talking about why I was there. I was talking about other things. Like my parents not being of the same religion, and that's why I was something like that. So I made up something that could, explain certain things, and my mother found out and pulled me out because, I wasn't getting the help that I needed because I wasn't giving the person the actual work to help me. Then I graduated from college. I moved to New York, and it continued. Eating, not eating. It became endless exercising. It became 4 or 5 hours at the gym. That's really what it turned into, which I wasn't doing so much in college. So then I had that. Then I was trying to exercise a lot, lots of cardio, but I was at the gym for like 4 hours a day, and I was walking all over the place. And then I was making lists of food that I wanted to eat and shouldn't eat, and always my New Year's resolutions were watch the cheese. I had a lot of New Year's resolutions, which was watch the cheese, and like lose weight. That was like always on my mind. Lose weight.
It's actually,
and
other
at the
than
same
the
time,
specificity about the cheese, the lose weight thing is pretty standard New Year's resolution. That's why you can't find any room in a gym until like St. Patrick's Day. In normal times.
So the lose the weight, watch the cheese, which my sister liked to joke with me about all the time. And there's Emily. There was, her resolution, watch the cheese.
There's Emily. She's staring at a block of cheese.
Right? And, and it doesn't help that, I don't know. It was just impossible for me to figure out really what I wanted to be or do, because I had a journal, and I was cutting pictures out of women that I wanted to look like, and there were all these athletic women. basketball players, volleyball players. The famous volleyball player, I can't remember her name, Gabby Reese. Yeah, she was huge back then, and she was like she was a star. She had this beautiful athletic body. I wanted to look like that, and everything I was doing was not going to give me that. Not eating and doing cardio, and yet somehow I thought that's what she did in order to, look that way. So that was out of college, and it just kind of it just became this endless cycle. In my 20s, gaining weight, losing weight, not really having any real plan, going to the gym, always going to the gym. The gym was always an important part of my lifestyle. Even if I wasn't doing, even now that I think about it, I wasn't doing things right, it just didn't matter. I was there. And somehow being there was going to eventually make me look the way I wanted to look, even though I didn't know what I wanted to look like. Fast forward to when I finally met, Diego in 2004, and slowly, he started to see my issues. They started to come out. I can't hide them from him. My mother and sister had no way of helping me figure this out because it never bothered them how they looked or what they looked like. They just didn't have that same sense of disappointment in themselves like that I did. And it really was a disappointment in my body that why wasn't I happy with the way I looked? Why couldn't I find the answer? And no one could help me with that. And I realized that no one was going to help me except me eventually when Diego finally said to me, after we were married, and this is now, I'm in my early 30s, what do you want to look like, Emily? And I said, I don't know. I just don't want to look like me. And when I said that, he didn't look at me and, he said, well, what are you going to do about it? It was, very mathematical, it was like, well, you need to figure out something. Not at all. He didn't come from me. He just looked at me. He said, well, what have you been doing? You got to do something. You got to try something. So I actually made an appointment to see a guy to have cellulite removed. What's it called? I'm blanking on the name of it. But I went to see a doctor, like a plastic surgeon, basically, right? I thought, I'm just going to have the fat removed from my body. I also made an appointment to see a personal trainer. So I went to her first before I went to him. And then I decided I wasn't going to make the appointment to have that surgery done. I was going to stick with the personal trainer. But that's where I was at the time.
So you learned something new every time. I never heard this part of the story.
Yeah. So this was in 2008. I made an appointment to either have surgery on my thighs, like to have the fat sucked out of me, which is what I thought really needed to happen because there was no way that I could ever just do it on my own. And then made an appointment to see a personal trainer. She was the first person who helped me understand that eating really was the answer to what I was seeking. That I had to eat, that I wasn't eating enough protein, that I was eating very little, that my diet was very limited in, vegetables and just, a balanced way of eating that we all kind of know now and we talk about all the time. But to me, it was not eating was the answer. So she helped me with that. She didn't help me with the training. The training was bupkis, what I did with her. But it stuck with me because after a month, I saw results. And it was simply because of the way that I had been eating. And I wasn't hungry. And I wasn't starving. And I was enjoying the foods I was eating. And at the same time, I was losing weight and losing fat. And somehow it was actually working. So that got me thinking, okay, finally I'm on this path of, I understand that eating is important. What's the next step? Well, the next thing this was not her, but the strength training. And that's a whole other story of how I got involved with that. So I don't know if I want to really go into that because that had everything to do with my back issues. But that definitely was the second part of the puzzle. So that was okay. That was the first piece. So that was the first piece of the puzzle was the eating, and then the strength training came 2 years later. from when Diego said, try this program because this helped
Yeah.
me with my back. And, that goes with the whole back episode, which we'll do a back episode eventually. So here we are today.
Yeah.
It's now 2020. So this was 10 years ago. I already had the eating part down. The strength training part came. Bam, within like 2 months, I'm thinking, oh, my back feels better. I'm stronger. I'm eating. My weight's going. I'm building muscle. I mean, it's been that little train now, up and down, of course, or a little roller coaster ride since 2010. But what has been constant, even though my strength training has been a little bit, it's been good, but I had some other stressors in my life, with my sister. The eating became very constant, and the relationship with food became so much healthier, and my issues with my own body probably a good 5 years into that. So I would say probably 2015. I'm not going to say it like, I was fixed overnight, but eventually it's probably been the past, I'd say 5 years, I have been the happiest with myself than I'd ever been since I was 13 years old. And I can honestly say that there is in the back of my mind, like as you said earlier, I'm not like 100%. I'm not 100%, but damn, I'd say 99.9.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess, I don't know if anybody ever gets to 100%. Doesn't everybody always have a little bit of self-doubt about some things?
I think always.
Yeah.
I think always.
So, I mean, I guess
Always.
there's degrees to this as well. And so, I've struggled at various points in my life with body image, but maybe not to the same degree. It was never anything that I was in therapy specifically for, even though you were talking around it. But that was never anything that that was a main cause of seeking some kind of intervention or medical help. What's also interesting to me, I mean, it's like both of us are growing up, we're being misfed information, which is kind of, I mean, like a funny term to be talking about misfed information when we're talking about eating or not eating.
Right.
But,
right.
Yeah. So your mom not being able to talk to you about it, in the absence of information or absence of discussion, and like your friends fill in, your environment, and you're in an environment in dance where it's like very much based on being smaller and competitive, like competition around that. So, I mean, I think that's probably a pretty intense condensation of what people what a lot of people might experience just with cultural influences, but you had that really
yeah. And I think we'll talk about this at another time, but definitely wasn't body dysmorphia was what I would say I have had, which many people have. Were some of my friends bulimic? Possibly. I definitely had met anorexic dancers. There weren't none in high school, but the dance programs I went to, I met them. I did try laxatives. One of my girlfriends in high school was doing that. I tried that later on.
Yeah, my college roommate would do that.
Yeah, because I couldn't, I never could stick my finger down my throat. So trying to vomit was out, and I liked food too much to not eat it, and there was nothing in my life that I had to really control. So, and anorexia is a form of control. So it was like, well, where do I fit in? Well, the term body dysmorphia wasn't really, I guess, maybe around at the time. It is now, and that's definitely where I was, and where I was for all through high school, college, and beyond. So yeah, it's I tried going to therapy in New York. That didn't work. I've tried it. I tried it so many times, and I just never ever could bring the subject up.
That's interesting.
I couldn't talk about it. I didn't want to talk about it. Partly because probably I didn't want to face it, and I didn't know how this person was going to help me.
Yeah.
deal
But
with,
it's also, I
deal with
mean, I
that.
think like to a certain degree, it's like you feel like that's what you're trying to achieve. And if you're asking somebody
Yeah.
else to help you stop being that way, you're afraid you're going to turn into what you're trying not to be. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this is going to interfere with my ability to look like that dancer. Or have us, you know, if I address this, it's just going to turn into a different problem.
And see, as a dancer who started with ballet, when I was 16, you know, one of my teachers said, "Emily, you're not going to be a ballerina," and that was upsetting to me. But she was right. She says, "You're going to be a modern dancer." So then I stopped looking at ballerinas and I started looking at, you know, dancers who did modern, and that they had a very different body than a ballerina. They were more muscular. Because they were expected to do more floor work, which meant they had more defined arms, more muscle definition in their arms. And all of a sudden, I was like, okay, I'm not going to be the stick figure over there. I'm going to look like that. But I didn't know how to be that. So it's like, my mind was kind of blown. How do I look like either of these worlds? How do I go about looking like her? So it was hard then to even be a modern dancer because I'm like, what does a modern dancer look like? Oh, she looks like that, but I don't look like that. I've got, you know, a bigger chest than she does. So there was an obsession with how big my chest was. Like not having breasts was very important to me because it was uncomfortable and it wasn't what a dancer had.
Yeah.
And that's so weird because so many women get implants wanting to have bigger, and all I've ever wanted
So
was
Emily,
smaller.
I got to say that does not sound
Smaller.
strange to me because I was a cross country runner. And do you remember? I'm older than you, and you may not remember the skipper doll. Do you remember the skipper doll?
Oh, yeah.
With the arm.
I never had.
I
a
didn't
skipper
have that
doll.
one, but the arm that spun around and then she'd grow breasts like she was going through puberty. I was like,
I don't remember that one.
there was that one. And so I was always like, that's what I need to be able to do. Like, spin my arm around, have him go away for cross country practice, spin him back around so I can go to the high school dance.
It was the worst thing that happened to me. I think was going through puberty. Like I was dying. I was like, no, these can't get any bigger. And you know, I don't have anything anyway. But it was too much. Dancers don't look like this. Dancers don't have this.
So all of this is interesting because, like, I in this conversation and in regards to what we normally talk about with what we like about strength training, it's about function. What can you do, right? And none of this is a conversation about like a little bit about what this ballerina does as opposed to what this modern dancer does, but that wasn't the mindset or the focus. It was all on appearance. And I don't think that's probably not uncommon, right? Like just in society in general, I think we overfocus on what people's bodies look like instead of what their bodies are capable of doing.
Yep, and that's exactly what I was up until 10 years ago when I started strength training.
Yeah.
And then realized what my body was capable of doing. And then when I got back into dance and I was dancing with the company, oh my God, what I could do as a result of being stronger and also being older. So a more mature dancer than at that time too, mid 30s. Very different from, when I was in my, 20s. Or even in college. So it was, everything changed. Everything changed when I just took myself away from how do I look to how do I function.
But that's also not to say that there isn't a correlation between like certain body types, what they're good at. Like that's what your dance instructor is telling you. Like I always, I didn't have like super fast muscles, so I wasn't going to be a sprinter. I liked endurance running, so that was fine, but I'm not built like, your world-class distance runners.
Right.
But
so,
like that,
so
that form and function go together. And that's a conversation that that's information that's important, I think, for kids to have when they're trying to decide, or for athletes or whoever to decide,
Yeah.
It sounds like your dance instructor steered you towards a style of dance where your body type was going to be an asset.
Exactly.
But sort of that language of body types, endomorph, ectomorph, mesomorph, wasn't so prevalent then as it is now. And maybe that's
No.
not even prevalent language now, but we're just aware of it because we're in strength training. But like that is something that no one discussed with me. So I wanted to be a distance runner. I'm more of a mesomorph. I'm not like the tall, thin distance runner, or even short, thin. But and just the way I'm built, inevitably I was going to develop knee issues. Just my skeletal structure, with a lot of long distance running, that was going to be aggravating. But nobody ever said any of that, which in a way I'm grateful for. Like the focus was on function. The focus was reasonably fast. Now cut some time off of your last race pace, and we'll do so. Like it was on function. It wasn't on appearance. But they do kind of play a part. They do, and kids do notice that. And I thought, well, if I just run more, I'll start to look like, that runner, that world-class runner or whatever.
So with the running, is this this high school, middle school, high school,
Yeah,
college?
back in high school and then into college.
High school. Let's backtrack. Let's backtrack. You ran cross country. Let's start with that. When did you begin running?
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, I guess I ran track in middle school as well. In middle school, it was kind of, I don't know, like I guess in middle school, I had a friend who was kind of,
All right, take a
cut all
moment.
of this. No, but I guess like I'm just trying to think about like when I first started running in middle school, a lot of it did have to do with like I had a friend who was competitive about being thin. And running seemed like a way, in the same way that you're describing that you were not eating, as a way to be thinner. It was like, okay, well, I like running. That's a way that I'll probably get thinner. And so that's kind of where it started with me. And I probably had more issues with trying to be friends with that girl by being thin, because that was the thing that she valued. And I mean, you see it in the culture around us. You'd see it in the movies. You'd see it in the magazines. It seemed like, that was probably what you needed to do to be popular or whatever. And so that's kind of maybe where the running started, or one of the influences in how I got into running in the first place. But then when I got into high school, it did become like more of a competitive sport for me, because I was decently good at it, and I enjoyed it, and I would run long distances, just decompress. It was a good like stress release for me. So there were a lot of benefits about that for me for a lot of different reasons, but it was definitely also always an aspect to it that like seemed to be related to weight management or appearance or trying to be smaller. And some of that trying to be smaller was trying to be faster or more aerodynamic or whatever.
Sure.
But, no one ever really explained this with the different body types, and, that's all fine. But I never had any coach say, oh, you need to lose weight. Like I never had an authority figure or somebody that was guiding me towards meeting my race time goals, telling me I needed to lose weight.
Gotcha.
you know, whereas like that's a situation you had that's got a lot more power and a lot of that carries a lot more weight. So that's kind of the wrong word.
No, but I mean, no, it does. And so into college, well, actually, what happened with the girl that you were trying to be
Oh, yeah, but see,
competitive
that
with?
was all part of it too. Like we stopped being friends. Like we moved up into high school. 3 different middle schools converged. Friend groups shifted.
Yeah, okay.
She got in with a different crowd. I got in with a different crowd. And that's when, I mean, like the running for me at that point was like really excellent because I got to be friends with kids on the team who were different grades and had, you know, performance goals, and you know, it sort of gave me a different way of looking at things that I think was beneficial. But yeah, and then I ran in college, but it's just, I don't know. Like, I'm not a super competitive person. I should have probably run cross country in college, but I didn't actually do that until like, I did a 9th semester where I went back and did student teaching. And that's when I decided I was going to run on the cross country team. Because I still had eligibility because I hadn't used it. Like, what?
Nice.
Late bloomer.
So with your relationship with yourself and with food, how did that? Was it more the running? Was it more the exercise was going to change how you looked or how you felt? Was it a combination? Like for me, it was definitely the gym like especially in college and then after college, it was definitely going to the gym. Plus, can't eat that, can't eat that, can't eat that, can't eat, like, you know, a lot of denying myself.
Yeah, I think like when I was in middle school, it was a lot more of like not eating. And that was like, I had this friend who was, you know, competitively trying to be skinny. You know, I remember there was a time we're in the car and she takes her hands and put them around her thigh. Like, my thumbs touch. Can you do that? And I couldn't.
Yeah.
Right? So that kind of thing. And so at that point, I wasn't really as into running. So it was sort of just like, I don't think I'm going to eat that. I'm not going to eat that. Then when I got into high school, it was more of just the exercise. And then when I was in college, I had this roommate who I think at the time we had, between the two of us, one of us had read an article that was about exercise bulimia. And both of us were like, oh, that's what you are.
Oh, God.
And that was kind of like, for sure, my roommate, like she'd stress out about exams the next day. She'd order a pizza, eat the entire thing, then not eat for days and run. She'd just like disappear and go run for hours. And so, I mean, I know it never was really as extreme as that, but that was definitely an influence on my relationship or my relationship with food or with exercise when I was in college. But it was always just a thing that I did. It was always just a part of my day. Like, running wasn't necessarily so much. It was just a, you know, box I had to check. The same way I have to drink a cup of coffee in the morning, you know?
Right.
But anyway, I mean, I guess the body image thing that I'm thinking about, or that's in my head a lot now, and is specific to women, is the changes that women's bodies go through.
Yes.
Right? Like, I got teenagers.
Yeah.
Their bodies are changing.
Yeah.
I'm 50. My body is changing. 3 times in my life when I was pregnant, my body went through huge changes, and all of that like affects your your interaction with your body, your perception of it, your body image. I don't know. Plus, I was just listening to the Michelle Obama podcast on menopause, so there was a little conversation about that in there too.
Yeah, so we've been so far between the two of us. This podcast in particular has been very specific to women, and I know that we mentioned earlier that it's it does affect men and women, that it's not just females, but the majority of people who suffer from these issues, these diseases, are females, and it has to do with the culture, our culture. It has to do with the different sports that one plays in or competes in, or I'll consider dance a sport, gymnastics, ice skating, anything that requires you to look a certain way, perform a certain way. That's not to say that men don't go through this, but and they do, and we definitely I want to touch on that. All you have to do is pick up a Men's Health magazine, and what do you see on the front cover? There's a picture of Lenny Kravitz I saw today. He's 56 years old. He looks like he's got the body he had when he was in his 20s or 30s. And he's like six pack. He's chiseled. He's 56. What kind of message is that sending to the men out there who are 56 years old? Are they supposed to look like him? Is that expected? And it doesn't just pertain to women anymore. I think more and more men are becoming a little bit more invested in, is this the way I'm supposed to look? Am I supposed to look that way? How do I look this way? And I think that getting older for them too plays a big part. The older they get, the more they don't want to lose their looks. At the same time, they want to feel good too. There's that kind of struggle, and I know we'll get to that. I'm kind of jumping ahead of like the wanting to be stronger versus wanting to physically look good too. And you're being pulled in 1,000 different directions, and that has to do a lot with just media, culture, magazines, people, other people, maybe friends. You're talking about being like people who are competitive. Can you wrap your fingers around your thighs? I can.
Well, because that was when I was in high school, but I guess the thing now is like, how big is your thigh gap? Or at least that was the thing a couple of years ago.
You mentioned, so you're mentioning changes. My niece, I have two. One is 4, and the other is going to turn 10 in November, and her body's going through changes now. And she's starting to notice, and she's starting to feel, probably insecure about that. So I sent her a package of the Judy Blume books that I read when I was younger. And I told her to read, there was a specific one I wanted her to read. I said, I want you to read this one first. Read this one first. Because this one really is pertaining to what she's going through and what young girls start to go through at age 9, 10, 11, 12. That's when it starts. And you have to kind of start off almost young these days, like telling them, look, your body is your body, and it's great no matter what. Because I remember very clearly when I was teaching in Baltimore City, I was teaching 5th grade, and one of the teachers was teaching 3rd grade science, and she did and I had those students too for math. She did a gravity lesson with them, and she brought in a scale. And she thought it was going to be so cool to have them weigh themselves, where they weigh on Earth versus what they would weigh in space. It didn't go very well. She came to me later in tears because the girls would get on the scale, see what they weighed, and these are 3rd grade girls.
Oh boy.
See what they weighed, and they broke into tears in her classroom. They all started just to cry about what they weighed. And then they were comparing their weights. Yeah. And these are 8-year-olds.
It's like, that's the thing about like talking about it, right? Being able to open up a conversation, because an adult, I think, needs to be careful not to give messages that indicate that worth and body weight or image are connected.
Yeah.
But also to not talk about it leaves that space open for whatever cultural influences your kid encounters, or your, whoever, your student. So TikTok, social media. Right. Because my kids were telling me their, your For You page is dependent on what you look at. But they said there's like a trend, or has been a trend, that's got to do with, I forget what it was, but like, basically being anorexic or not eating, so there's like cultural influences basically. So if you didn't have the friend that I had in seventh grade, TikTok will find that friend for you. So, but even before that, like, movies, how thin the actresses were, the cover models, any of that's going to fill in the void, or people will, make stuff up on their own, right? Like, oh, I guess I don't need to eat. I shouldn't be eating. Or, oh, I guess I need to go to the gym 5 times a day. Or,
that's, so fast forward all that thinking that I had for so many years to now what we both do as coaches, right? We coach people. What do? We teach them how to, squat, press, bench, deadlift, among other things, push-ups, chin-ups, whatever, we're trying to create stronger individuals, people who move better, because these people sit all day for work, or they're getting older and they want to play with their grandchildren, whatever whatever it is. We know that strength is the epitome of, of what we should be. We should be strong, and we can get stronger no matter what age, no matter where we are. We have the tools. And no one did that when I was, younger. I didn't have that. I didn't have that thinking. So now people come in and we talk about, well, what should I eat? It's like, yes, you should be eating. So there's definitely this shift of
let's start with yes.
Yes, no one comes in and says, and people come in and say, yes, I want to lose. Some people come in and they say, I'm looking to lose weight, and they want to come to the gym. But my response always is, great, I understand that. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to put you on a strength program first, and we're going to make you consistently come and train 2 to 3 days a week. And once you get into that habit, let's focus on eating. I guarantee you'll start to eat better just because you don't want to miss the gym. And there's that concept of, wait, eating for performance? Wait, eating to fuel what I do here? Yes. Well, what do I do? How do I eat? Well, let's start with protein. What's protein? I mean, It's having that discussion. It's not this discussion of looking a certain way or being thinner, or, people say, well, what's my goal? What goal should I have? I had a guy wanting to know what goal. And he, I said, well, let's not pick a number. Let's just say, I want you to lift more than you did the time before. I want you to do another set. I don't care what you do on day 1. I care what you do on day 31. And he started to hear me. He goes, I get it. I said, yeah, goals are great. Goals are great to have. But I think a goal of, I'm going to go to the gym twice this week and do something. And now it becomes 3 times a week.
Sometimes, and that's one of the things I think that's nice about strength training, is it gives you different ways to envision your goals. So the goals aren't always based on your scale weight.
Exactly.
They're based on the weight on your bar. They're based on consistency.
Right.
They're based on performance. It gives you a different way to conceptualize what weight is or what its importance is. And it's, not what the scale says about you.
Yeah.
It's what you can do in the world.
A big push for me is that word performance. How you perform in the gym. I'll say to people, we'll know that you're doing the right thing because you'll come in here with energy and you'll be able to hit all your weights that day, and we'll have a good day. If you're coming in tired, if you're coming in fatigued, if you're coming in, you're dragging yourself in, or you're passing out, or you're getting dizzy, I want to know, because that's going to indicate what you're doing outside. And if you're not eating enough to help you in here, what's the use of being in here? It goes hand in hand. So that performance is a huge. That's one word I use a lot.
Totally going off the original topic, but like along those lines, one of the things that I think is really cool in regards to performance and nutrition that I have heard in the past week from Felicia is like, she'll come home from her soccer practice and she'll be like, I need to eat something with protein in it. Like that is not, and we've had conversations, right? That is never something I ever would have said when I was a sophomore, right? Come home from cross country practice and be like, I need some protein so I can rebuild. No.
Right.
It would be like, I'm thirsty, I need some water. Like Coach talked to us about staying hydrated. And I mean, to a certain degree, I'm glad Coach never told us that, like, we, I don't know. There's ways that conversation could have gone wrong. But, Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think I know we started
Actually,
going off, but
you know what? I'm trying to think back, and that might be entirely wrong. My high school coach may very well have talked to me about what I was supposed to be eating, and I think I probably tuned it out because I'm starting to remember. Because the bigger thing when I was in high school is I was vegetarian, so it wasn't. It was there. That's 100% wrong. There were
Yeah.
lots of conversations, but they took place between my mom and my coach because my mom was afraid I was like not eating properly.
so no one ever talked to us about eating. My teachers never discussed that with us. It was not about that, and definitely in college, my instructors didn't talk to us about that. My eating revolved around going to the bookstore, the Quad, and getting a bagel, a banana, and a power bar, and that's what I'd have all day until I went home and had dinner, if I had dinner when I came home, because I lived at home and commuted. So that was my daily eating, and even into meeting Diego and teaching, my breakfast consisted of a yogurt and banana. A yogurt, not a Greek yogurt, not not skyr, not like protein heavy. A yogurt, like a Yoplait, and a banana, and then a frozen burrito that defrosted in my lunch bag, because I refused to go to the teacher's lounge because all they did was bitch there, so I didn't want to use the microwave. So I would eat this frozen ass burrito, and then go home and have like cheese and crackers. That was before I met Diego. Then when I met Diego,
That was like not following your New Year's resolution, Emily.
I still had a yogurt and banana. I still had a frozen burrito, but then dinner was actually like something he made. Yeah, no, I think we
Yeah, we've totally gone off the rails.
we've gone off the rails, but I think this is a subject, and I'm sure our listeners will understand. It's a subject that does kind of go off the rails. I mean, there's so many parts
I
to
didn't
this.
even I think what I said this time is 100% different than what I said the last time too. Like, there's so many different ways to even tell your own story in relation to this.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many things I start to think about.
That's kind of what happened this time. It was like the last time we made the first pass through, and I was sort of like, okay, the basics are, I ran a lot. It was, there was a performance or athletic aspect to it, but a lot of it was also motivated by this idea that if I ran more, I was going to change body type, which, of course, doesn't happen. And that cardio was like, just like you're saying, going to the gym or whatever. That was gonna cure everything. The cardio cure.
Yeah, and I realized that too.
And this time I was sort of more like, actually, it had a lot to do with who my friends were. Because who's feeding information to you that shapes your ideas, in addition to what you suck in from movies or magazine covers or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think it definitely, and like I said, my friends and I, we didn't really discuss it. We didn't talk about it. When we went to get food in between performances, like Nutcracker performances, we went and got the nastiest food. I mean, we're getting Italian sausages, we're getting greasy French fries. I mean, we ate crap backstage. Don't think that dancers were eating well. They ate crap. The one thing I never did as a dancer was pick up smoking. That's the big thing. I mean, you think about this, the coffee and the cigarettes, right? You get and that was real. That's one thing I never did. I never smoked. I never picked up smoking. It was disgusting to me. I mean, I did try it, but it wasn't very. I couldn't inhale, so that was that was it. That was in college anyway, but that was something I never. That was to me was not the way I was going to go. I wasn't that kind of dancer. I wasn't gonna smoke and drink coffee and eat nothing. There was something else going on in my head, and it resulted in where I was how many years ago. But it's a topic that bears discussion. There's so many different aspects to it, and Rebecca and I have made endless notes here, of where to go with our discussion. So today's podcast was simply to introduce the topic, give some background on us, and let you know that it's it definitely has changed. We've changed our thoughts about it as we have discovered strength training. And definitely, I think I don't know if I want to. I won't speak for you, Rebecca, but for me as a coach, I have a different outlook on what I should look like, what people should look like. I don't want to put that, and I try very hard to not have that at the gym. It's about, you know, what your body's functioning. I mean, what your body's capable of doing, what it can do. And if you want to change it, I can help you. You know, I mean, I don't disregard that. People want to talk about food or losing weight. Yes, I can help them. If they want to talk about gaining weight, I can help them. But it doesn't become the only thing that your body can do or should do or should be.
Yeah, I mean, it's like definitely you get that a lot, that people want to do something to address or change an aspect of their body. And if that's part of the conversation, that's never something that I introduce. That's something that the client or the lifter introduces, and that is never the only way that we talk about their body. I always kind of keep that might be something that we talk about a little bit. Now let's focus on what you can lift. Let's focus on how you're going to fuel that. Let's focus on, other aspects of it too. Yeah. So that's not the sole focus.
So I think that I'm
positive
that
goals.
Yes, the next topic on body image that we'll probably discuss in our next podcast will be about, barbell training and why strength training offers a very positive focus on the body, and discuss how it can what it offers to men and women, both men and women, because I don't want to discount. Again, I want to make sure that we talk about the men who come in to strength train, and how it changes your mind about your body. Maybe you had one goal when you started, and now that goal has changed because you see changes that you never thought were possible, mentally, physically, emotionally. And so now there's a whole other goal out there that you want to achieve, and then how it affects you and just your daily life too, not just in the gym but outside the gym. So that's my thinking for maybe part 2 of our body image.
Yeah, I mean,
discussion.
whatever. I'm kind of looking at the notes. It looks like there's a lot of stuff that we could just skip right ahead.
Yeah, and I ask, I've asked our listeners before, those out there, if they have thoughts. This podcast might be one where people do have thoughts and do have questions and do have comments about. And feel free to email us at info@5by3.com. You can also, Rebecca, you want to give your email, so maybe they want to email you. They could email either one of us.
Yeah, so I'm at, you got a pen and paper? It's long. Cornerstone Strength Maryland @gmail.com.
Email either one of us, and leave a comment, leave a question, because we'd like to hear from people, men and women, about just this topic. It's an important one to talk about, and it doesn't also often get discussed. So thanks for listening, everybody. Again, send us your questions, comments to info@5by3.com or Cornerstone Strength
Maryland
at gmail.com.
Is Diego there repeating that? Like he caught it without pen and paper, but you...
No, it's just me here. I'm all alone at the gym. All right. Well, that's our show. We will be back in 2 weeks with either part 2 of our body image.
Who knows?
Or with an interview but we will be back in a couple weeks, and we thank you for listening today. Thanks, everybody.
Oh, see ya.
Thanks for listening to 5by3 Radio with Emily and Rebecca. If you like our show and want to know more about 5by3 training, please visit us at www.5, that's F-I-V-E, the letter X, the number 3.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. To learn more about Rebecca, please visit her website, cornerstonestrengthmaryland.com. Thanks for listening and have a great week.